Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is your fave film critic, the podcast starring, hosted by, produced by, conceived by, whatever, your favorite film critic, me, Dom Griffin. And this is a new episode. It's what is it? It's like almost the end of February. I just realized I hit record and don't know what day it is, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm happy to be back. Hope you guys are happy to be back as well. And we've got some stuff to talk about today. I did watch some stuff this week, which is pretty cool. Hopefully by now you have seen my review of Dune Part 2. If you have not, I'll, I guess, put a link to it so you can. Don't worry, I don't really spoil anything from the movie. No spoilers for a 60-year-old book. But yeah, I hope you liked that video, and if you haven't seen it yet, I hope you watch it. We're not going to talk a ton about Dune today. One, because I just made that video, and two, I want to save that for the episode that's going to come out when the movie comes out, because like I don't want to, it would feel weird to like take a lot of your time knowing most of you haven't seen the movie yet, you know what I mean? I'd rather just like wait, so we'll do that later. But I did watch some other stuff this week. I watched some stuff, even though I feel like I've lately not been watching enough stuff, but I watched some stuff. So we'll talk about some of those things, and we'll lead off with just a handful of, I guess I can't even really call them like news items, but just stuff I wanted to talk about, just stuff that happened. And yeah, you know, the usual. Hope everyone's like doing good and feeling good. I feel like I've not had like the best few weeks, and I feel like a lot of people that I know have been having really hard times lately. Like a lot of my friends have just been like sharing just difficult stuff, just hard stuff, and like almost everyone I know is like going through it in some way. I'm not sure if this is like a moon thing. I don't know if I need to go look at the stars to figure out what's going on, but I guess I just wanted to take not some time, but a piece of time. I'm not going to talk about this for too long. I just wanted to like remind everyone, including myself, I guess, that you don't always know what people are going through. You don't always know what people are struggling with. You don't always know what people are like juggling. And even some people in your life who seem like they've just got shit on lock and they're just good, many of them probably aren't. Like just statistically speaking, I feel like most of the people that you know, many of them are like having a hard time in some way, shape, or form. And I complain a lot and I gripe a lot, and like, you know, and I'm not on air or in videos or whatever. Like I've in the last year or so, I feel like I've definitely indulged in some level of doomerism more than I ought to. So like I sometimes fall victim to this, but I just want to remind people to make sure that you're just being the best you can to your fellow man. Like just be as loving and supportive as you can be, really, honestly. Don't want to make it sound very like fake and like cringy and like kumbaya and stuff, but like I consider myself very lucky that I have a lot of friends who are like really lovely people, and they're all very good to me, and I hope that I am even close to being as good to them as they are to me. And I feel like I'm very blessed in that regard, and I know not everybody like is. I know not everybody has people that they can feel comfortable opening up to, and I know it's not easy out here for folks. So I guess I'm just kind of encouraging everyone to just like check in on people in their lives right now. Like, you know, if there's someone you haven't talked to in a minute that you used to talk to more or whatever, I feel like it's a good time to just check in. And like, I'm guilty of this as much as anyone is. So like, if you're listening to this and like I haven't talked to you in a week, I'm sorry. Like I also get in my own head about stuff, but, I don't know, just these last couple of days in particular, I feel like I've talked to a lot of people who are having a hard time in a lot of ways. And, I just think that we got to be here for each other, you know, like we got to really, we're kind of all we got, you know what I mean? Like, I really do feel like, you know, like our like government doesn't really give much of a fuck about us. If there's any like advanced alien species who are plotting to like destroy us, I don't think they care. it's just us. It's just me and you and us, you know? So be cool, I guess. Just be like nice, be patient, be friendly, be open, you know what I mean? And like, try to give the people in your life, some room to just like be, some room to just like feel or think, and make sure the people in your life know they can be vulnerable. Oh my God. I feel like having difficulty saying the word vulnerable is probably like crazy, like, you know, like a psychological leak that you might have difficulty being vulnerable. But make sure people around you can feel like they can be vulnerable. If you know, if you can hold space the way you can. Everyone has different, not everyone can, you know, I'm not telling you guys all to go out there and be like sin eaters or like Michael Clark Duncan in The Green Mile. You don't have to go like suck up everyone's pain and spit out flies or anything. But if you in your life are capable of, metaphorically speaking, destroying Tom Hanks's kidney stone, you should do that. However you can make this tortured metaphor work for you and your friends' lives. I feel like I should go to jail trying to like get off a Green Mile reference in this thing. I don't know what the hell's happening. But yeah, I don't know. It's just been on my mind, like especially today. Like I just really care about my friends and all the people that aren't my friends, the people I don't even know. I know they're going through. There's a bunch of us on Earth. Yeah, the longer I go with this, the more it sounds like crazy or like I'm high or something, but I'm not. I'm actually just, I can't even say I'm sleep deprived. I think I slept okay. I don't remember. It's been a weird, whatever. I feel like I'm always on this podcast saying like, it's been a weird few days. It's been a hard few days. Like, you know, that meme, where it's like the meme format is like a couple, or like, it's like a guy and a girl and they're in separate frames, and they're both like laying on their stomach in bed on their phones. And you can use this format to do all sorts of stuff. But there's this one meme where it's the girl texting a guy and she's like, babe, I'm having a bad day. And the guy is like, thought bubble, when is this bitch gonna have a good day? But then his like actual text to her is like, what's wrong, sweetie? And that's kind of shitty. But sometimes when I'm just kind of freely expressing myself and I end up saying stuff like, this has been a bad week, it's been a bad, I feel like someone is mentally thinking, when the fuck is this motherfucker gonna have like a good a good week? So I guess I actually probably need to just personally alter my parameters for what is good and what is bad. And then I don't know, sometimes I think the podcast is like also like an accountability measure for myself. Like, you know what? I need to make sure that in the next couple of episodes, maybe I have some fun stuff to share with everybody, or some good tidings, I suppose. So this is, I guess, actually, I'm saying this to all of you, but I'm really saying it to me, I suppose. It's just like, be cool, be good, be nice, be kind, all that shit. You know how it goes. So, just like love on each other, man. Like give out some fucking hugs. You even had a hug this week? Give out a hug. Give out some hugs. All right, we're gonna get into it. First thing to talk about. We're gonna talk about what's in the news. It's the only like major news thing I think I really saw that I forgot to write down for this is like the Hollywood Reporter put out another article about like what the MCU was up to and some of their plans and how they're probably going to completely get Kang out of the next Avengers movie, and like they're changing a bunch of stuff and they're trying to kind of refocus after how bad things went. And there's a couple of tidbits in there like about how one of the tidbits was like that Eric Pearson, who's like a guy who's worked in a lot of Marvel movies, is being brought in to do one final polish of the Fantastic Four. The last writer I think I heard being attached to it was Josh Friedman of the Sarah Connor Chronicles, War of the Worlds, I think he wrote the Avatar sequel that's not out yet, because like there was a writer's room and each one of them got to co-write one of the movies or whatever. So he's an Avatar guy. He's, I think, a pretty cool writer. I was kind of excited that he was involved, and then it's like, no, we're bringing in the MCU guy to fix it. So like I read that as being like, hey, the script is in pretty good shape. Can someone go back in and just fill in a lot of like just insipid humor? then it'll be good to go for sure. You know, like, that's the magic. So that was kind of a thing. But they talked about a handful of other, like they talked about how the showrunner for The Bear, I think, is going to be rewriting Thunderbolts, and it's going to start filming soon. And like, it's kind of a, I mean, The Bear rules. It's a good show. But it sounds like the Thunderbolts is just going to be Marvel doing like the Suicide Squad, basically. And the actual Thunderbolts concept in the comics, I think, is really cool and rad. Not conducive to the way the MCU works, but I think that would have been a cooler movie than just doing the Suicide Squad, but with Marvel people, you know? Which is like, whatever. Both of those companies are always biting shit from each other and taking it in a different direction. I'm not mad at that. It's more just like, that's not what Thunderbolts is. It's like a kind of different beast. And I'd rather have what the Thunderbolts is than like this shit. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe it'll be good. Don't know, but maybe. But part of it was that they were like talking about, hey, like the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer had like a gajillion views, and like the basically internal morale is up, is what it sounded like. But one of the things they listed about things are going good for us was that the X-Men 97 trailer, like they have a new animated series. It's the X-Men. It's going to be on Disney Plus. It's supposed to feel like a continuation of, it's supposed to feel like a continuation of the 90s animated series that most of us grew up on, or a lot of us at least have a fondness for. And I thought the trailer looked like whatever. Like the actual animation doesn't look very good. Like it broadly gestures at what that cartoon was, but like it just, I don't know, something about it. Again, we'll watch, we'll see how it goes. Props to them for having Magneto's caped giant M purple costume from the 80s for Magneto and stuff, because it's like kind of taking, it seems the jumping off point is like Xavier dying and Magneto running the school, which I think that happened in the comics around like Uncanny 200 maybe. I'm probably wrong, but it could be good. I love the X-Men, even like shitty X-Men stuff, you know what I mean? But there was a bunch of like fighting on the internet about it, about how, well, X-Men 97 is already bad because it's gone woke. They made the X-Men woke. And the thing that they did to make the X-Men woke, I guess, is that Morph, who is a character not unlike like Harley Quinn, who was born in the cartoon, not the comics, and later jumped to the comics. Morph, who was in the fucking pilot to the X-Men animated series, and then I think dies in the first episode, is a shapeshifter who, the only way I can describe the character, if you've ever watched the cartoon, is it's like if fucking Quagmire from Family Guy was like the comic relief guy in the X-Men. It was just like, hey, giggity, Wolverine, I can shapeshift. And he dies, and his character ends up being kind of like a symbol throughout the series or whatever. Well, they brought him into the comics at some point in the late 90s, probably early 2000s. And the version of the comics was looked much less like fucking Plastic Man, and had like more of an amorphous, sort of genderless, like it's a shapeshifter, like a, you know, like type vibe. So for the animated series, they've adopted that look rather than making him look like a stand-up comic from 1993. And they confirmed that Morph is non-binary, and these people lost their fucking minds. Like, why are they making it woke? Why are they going to make it woke? Like, why are they making the shapeshifter who can turn from a man to a woman, from multiple men to multiple women, and I think also animals? Why are you mad that they're confirming that that person is essentially genderless? Like, I'm not even saying I would agree if they were mad if they like race or gender bent a character. I think that stuff is stupid too, but it would make slightly more sense to me. It was like, oh, they made the X-Men woke. They made Cyclops a chick. They made Cyclops a chick and flat-chested. Like, they're not even showing Cyclops girls' boobs. You know, that would, to me, make more sense with the general tenor of these people's complaints and criticisms. But I'm like, it's Morph. You can't tell me you give a fuck about Morph to this degree, thing one. And thing two, it's the X-Men. It's like one of the, like, gayest comic books fucking ever. And the entire, like, through line of X-Men comics is ultimately, like, an ever-shifting metaphor for otherness. Whether you can read it as being about, like, being black, being gay, being Latino, like, being whatever. Like, the X-Men in some way can speak to you because, like, everyone knows what it's like to be, not everyone, I guess, but a lot of people know what it's like to be treated differently because of how you were born. And some fucking guy, if I find the tweet, I'll put it on the screen for the YouTube version. If I don't even go looking it up, just save yourself. This fucking guy was like, oh, the X-Men is not woke. It's not about all that other stuff you're talking about. It's just about superheroes like fighting big robots. And someone's like, who made the robots? Why did they make those robots? Are those robots potentially designed to kill people who are different by the government, you know? And it was just like, there's this phenomenon, I guess, that like a lot of people, I don't want to get in a whole like political thing and make it seem like I'm specifically casting aspersions on conservative leaning people. I am, but I still want to go into a whole thing about it, is that I don't understand how people who are like really right-wing can watch Star Wars and like root for the rebels. And it's like, who do you think the rebels are? And like the rebels are the rebels are Democrats, obviously, like they are. And you're like, come again? You're like, yeah, Darth Vader is obviously a Democrat. And you're like, I mean, you know, it's just like whatever. Not to say that Star Wars has like some super clean political compass you can graft onto it or whatever, obviously. But the idea that there are these people who believe these things in real life and then they watch certain things and they're like, this is fine. It's like you hate people who are different than you and you like Superman. Like, do you think if Superman was real, he would want to hang out with you? Or would he be like really disappointed in you and then go save a cat from a tree? And these are the same people who are like, I don't want to see Superman saving cats from trees. I want him to have armor. You know, I need Superman to have fucking armor. I need him to not be friends with any gay people. And I don't fucking, almost every other version of this, I sort of get. But getting like this about the X-Men, I don't know how many X-Men comics you can even read and then willfully read them wrong to think that this stuff lines up. Like, they don't, obviously, it's important to understand that like a lot of X-Men comics don't directly deal with these themes of otherness, right? A lot of them are just crazy soap operas involving, you know, like fucking time travel and space and weird shit. That's for sure. So like, I guess you could conceivably read a lot of X-Men comics and then never read one that effectively deals with those themes. That's possible. That's probably happened to people. But even then, I don't know how far you could get and then still come away like being like, man, X-Men was so good till they woke it up, till they made it all woke. And it just fucking kills me. And the thing is, in general, people are very insufferable about the X-Men on the internet. And like, I love the X-Men, but like a lot of people that love the X-Men are like nuts. Like the same time I saw all these tweets and argument about people trying to prove that X-Men is woke versus not, whatever. I saw someone tweeting like a screenshot of like Jubilee in, I think, X-Men Apocalypse, I think. And they're like, man, it's such a crime that she only has like 1 minute of screen time in all of these movies. Like, Jubilee's so great. And you kind of realize that like every X-Men is someone's fucking favorite. Like, I like Jubilee fine. She's cool. I liked her on the cartoon in the 90s, and I don't really give a shit about her anywhere else. I still think that Does a Mall Baby Love Chili Fries is like absolute poetry. I don't have any tattoos, but I think I might make that my first tattoo. I just love the phrase. But like, you're on the fucking internet like tweeting about like, why did Julie, there's only 1 minute of 9 X-Men movies? Like, what are you, there's like this thing where I feel like a lot of people, so there's two sorts of people on the internet, it feels like. There's these people who are just like anti anything that feels progressive at all, who think that everything is just bad, and that like they're being encroached upon, like their whiteness, their maleness, their cisness, their straightness, whatever. It's all gonna go away. They're gonna wake up one day and not be able to eat at Arby's, or jack off to swimsuit magazines or whatever. Like, everything's gonna go away for us. We're not gonna, you know. It's like, look, man, Shane Gillis is like doing very well. I feel like you guys could take a cue from him and try to actually be funny and slightly open-minded, and despite still being like, you know, boring like white chuds or whatever. Like, there's options for you here. But then the flip side of that is like these people who like have to make everything some kind of like underdog thing. It's like I unfortunately also overlap with a lot of like wrestling stuff too. So it's like wrestling people are constantly talking about, they can never talk about like, I like this wrestler, he's really good. It's always like, oh man, this company did so bad by this guy. They really fumbled him. Why didn't they let him be the greatest? You know, and it's like, everyone can't be like a sweet little bean that was fumbled and treated badly. Like some people just have whatever the career they're going to have. And then some characters are Jubilee was like a character that they invented in the 90s to be like an entry point for like young 90s people to get the X-Men, I guess. And then beyond that, there wasn't a whole lot to her. I mean, in my opinion, there's probably, I gotta be careful, there's probably some Jubilee story that's very meaningful to somebody, but it ain't fucking me, okay? I think they made her a vampire once and she had a baby or some shit. It was very confusing to me. But, you know, every X-Men character is like someone's diehard fave. And I feel like the people who have like niche faves, like if your fave is like someone who was like a huge, like if your favorite is Wolverine or Deadpool or Cyclops or whatever. I mean, actually, if your favorite Cyclops, that's a different story. But like some of these characters that are your fave, it's just like, I like this character. This is my favorite thing they've done or whatever. But if you have grafted onto like a niche character, and this is the same in wrestling, if your favorite wrestler is like a niche wrestler or someone who's never like above a mid-carder, you have to be insane about it. It has to be like, you have to talk about liking that person like you're being oppressed. Like, oh, he's my favorite. He's got this great moonsault. But like, what's happened to him is worse than like apartheid. Him never getting a world title run, literally worse than slavery. Like that's how these people kind of act. And it's just really, really grating. And I don't understand it. I don't understand how a lot of this is just because like Twitter has gotten so much worse since Musk bought it. But it's like the sorts of ideas, like in a marketplace of ideas, the ones that are rising to the top are like so bad. Like it's all the things that were wrong with Twitter from before he bought it, but like they've escalated. And there's just certain types of thoughts and arguments and things that like, I feel like before I used to just avoid a lot. Like not to say like I wanted to be in a bubble, but it's just there's certain people and thoughts I just didn't want to have to deal with. Now I see them all the time. And I don't know what I mean, other than just getting off the platform, which I would love to do. I just don't know how. Other than that, like I just keep seeing this stuff. And then like the side thing of the woke X-Men thing was there was a big days-long argument about Starship Troopers, and it was a fight between people who are like Starship Troopers is a funny satire, it's great. Anyone that doesn't get that is dumb. And then other people being like, well, it's not really a satire. Like I remember there was a point where someone was talking about, one of the tweets was like someone saying how the Federation in Starship Troopers is like a liberal democracy. And I was like, in the movie, I haven't rewatched Starship Troopers in a while, so some of the details I'm hazy on. But I could have sworn that like in that movie, people couldn't vote unless they like joined the army. And I was like, there's like all these things in the movie that are like, Paul Verhoeven is not the subtlest guy in the world, okay? And the idea that someone could watch Starship Troopers and be like, what? No, this is just cool. And it's like, okay, it is cool. Like, it's funny to ironically be like, to like ignore political subtext to just sort of focus on like, this is cool. Like, well, they're shooting giant bugs. That's cool. That's fine. When you're kind of doing it like in a offhand way, like, yeah, all that stuff. But also, you know, this is cool. Well, that's one thing. But I'm seeing people be like, no, we should model our society after this. And you're just like, what the fuck? Like, I don't even, there's a lot of movies where a lot of people hold a dumb opinion about it to me, and it irks me. But this one was actually like vexing my spirit. Like the more I read deeper, because I was like, there's some like genuine critiques to be made of Starship Troopers in the sense that like, I personally tend to be pretty critical of things that are satirical, where it's like, you know, if what you're doing ends up being like indistinguishable from the thing you're trying to satirize, like sometimes that means like whatever you did failed. I don't think of Starship Troopers that way. Like I think the movie like is pretty like it does all this stuff. It's like people started resharing screenshots from the movie and clips and stuff, and I hadn't seen it in a while, and I was like, oh yeah, some of these bits are like really well done and like on the nose, but in a way that's pretty audacious to me. And then you just see people in the comments like, nope, that's not what it. You're overthinking it. He's communist. Oh, we ruined everything. And I'm like, holy shit! Like this is like more. It's like, I guess, I know everyone else looks at the metric of Twitter has gotten worse with studies like, hey, like the F slur has been tweeted way more than usual and people are back to saying the R word like it's cool and stuff like that. That's not been my canary in the coal mine. Mine is like, this is the 5th time today that the algorithm has fed me a thought from someone who in 2024 unironically calls people communists as like the way they did in the 50s. You know, like that's my like bellwether for like, this is getting bad. And it was just basically, it all boils down to like the death of media literacy in this country, right? And I just don't, it's like kind of heartbreaking a little bit just to realize that like you actually can't, it used to just be, before the culture war, I guess, grew to the size that it is now, that you couldn't have certain kind of political conversations with people because you were operating from two dueling sets of realities and facts, right? Like if you believe a certain set of facts and you emotionally believe them, they're part of your core being, it doesn't matter if it was misinformation or propaganda or you were lied to or misled. You believe that now. That's just what it is, and that's how it is, right? And you know, you can't argue with like your like you know, like right-wing uncle who genuinely believes everything he sees on Facebook. You know, I feel like we spent years talking about like Trump voters and how they're like brainwashed and they're told all these things, and like some people being very like judgy of them. I mean, what's the way I'm trying to word this? There are people who talk about people who are hoodwinked by Fox News, and they talk about them like they're the stupidest fucking people to ever live, right? And like, how are these people this dumb? Why do they believe this bullshit? Da, 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 da. And like over the last several years, it has been really clear that everyone, this is happening to everyone from different directions. Like there are like, you know, liberal democratic people I know who believe like complete nonsense that like MSNBC has given them that's not ultimately true. You know what I mean? It happens. And I mean, and to be clear, this isn't me being like, I'm a leftist and like the centrist Dems are wrong. No, I mean, like I follow people who are like really left leaning, even for the left than me, who just don't fucking fully possess the ability to tell fact from fiction. And we're living in a world where that's just, it's also just getting harder. And because I'm not like super active, like with like real world stuff, obviously, seeing how it has seeped into just like pop culture too is like really strange, because it's like, you'll be trying to have a conversation with someone and you think we're on the same ground. We both saw the same movie. Like we both watched the same 2-hour experience. Like it's not even like, well, I watched it in IMAX and you watched it. No. We watched the same movie. And we're coming away with like vastly different things. And that's normal, right? I mean, the way I phrase that makes it seem like that's abnormal. No, plenty of people can watch the same thing and come to different conclusions. What I mean is like, I don't mean like I thought this and you think that. I'm talking about like, they're talking in a way where it's like, did you watch a completely different fucking movie? Or like, did you just never see it? And you're just like, what is going on? How is it happening where I'm talking to someone who thinks these things and believes these things? I don't understand. And part of it is like, it's this like cascading like thing where here's actually a pretty good example of this. The other night I saw a tweet. This is back to a wrestling thing. It was a tweet from an account called like Sasha Stan 131 or some bullshit. Once I saw that, I was like, I gotta click out of this window. And it was a Mercedes Moné, formerly WWE superstar Sasha Banks. It was like one of her fan accounts. In the world of wrestling, Mercedes stans are probably equal and probably have a lot of overlap with like Nicki Minaj's fan base. Like a lot of them are just very delusional, very strange, largely awful. But this tweet was like sometimes someone will share an article and then they'll put a quote in the tweet, like that's an excerpt from the article, like the pull quote basically. And it had this pull quote about how Mercedes allegedly just signed with All Elite Wrestling. She left WWE a couple of years ago. Now she's signing for like a big money deal for the other company. And the prevailing narrative from like the dirt sheets and the press was that she asked WWE for too much money and they said no, and then AEW paid her that money. So the narrative is like, well, she knew her worth and she went elsewhere, which is like fine, okay. But someone was sharing this thing that was like, she didn't even ask for more money. She just wanted to have parity with these other women. And they listed a handful of women in WWE that 1000% did not make the same or more money than Sasha when she was there. But it was a number of wrestlers who are not quote unquote very good, not very beloved, that Mercedes fans hate. And it just said, oh yeah, she was making less than them. And then if you click through the article, and it's quoting this from Dave Meltzer, like the wrestling journalist, And if you read the article, Dave does not say any of that. The actual first sentence in his quote from his radio show is, I actually don't know the specifics of her pay deal. And then he talks about some other stuff. So this person just wholesale made this thing up. They just made it up, whatever. But the tweet got like a bunch of quote tweets, a bunch of replies, a bunch of everythings. So few people even clicked through to the article to see that this was just completely made up. And a lot of those people, I realized this like kind of fucked me up. A lot of the people, and it was like hundreds, but when I saw it, it could have gotten to the thousands for all I know at this point. Many of those people just kind of blindly went with that, and they believe that to be fact now. And in the world of professional wrestling, it's a lot harder to get to what is and is not a fact, because the nature of the business is such that, like, you don't know if something's real or if it's part of the show or it's part of the story. Is it a work? Is it a shoot? So those people now believe this to be, this is canon for them. This is fact, that this is what happened with her deal, even though a random stan just made it up. And this is a weird thing to have gotten hung up on, because, like, who cares? But it crystallized for me, oh, this is how most people consume their information, not just about professional wrestlers, but about everything, like all things. And now that I'm saying this stuff out loud, I'm sorry, I feel like I sound really stupid and that everyone knows this, and I'm just like really late to having this epiphany. But it made me realize, like, oh my God, so many, it's not just like politics and like broader topics. It's like every little thing, every single thing. We no longer have a real shared reality. Like, there is so much misinformation, and so it's not, so many people just cannot discern. I want to be clear that I'm not saying that people that can't tell these things are dumb, and I'm a genius who can. I get misled by stuff. You know what I mean? I'm not fucking perfect. I love getting into it. I'll give you an example. Like, I love watching, I talk a lot about how I watch a lot of TikTok. I was watching a TikTok, and it was like a podcast of someone talking about, it was someone talking about, like, it was a podcast for like middle management type corporate office people. And a viewer or reader or whatever sent in a question or a comment telling a story about how they had like a Gen Z employee who didn't want to come to a meeting at 8 a.m. Because their hours are 9 to 5 or something. And they were talking about like, oh, that's a new employee. They don't even, like, what is wrong with these kids? And then this guy stitched it as the employee who they're talking about. And he had this big impassioned thing explaining about how, like, he has a gym class, all this different stuff. And I got like really sucked into it for whatever reason. And I was like, yeah. And then I got into the comments, and someone was like, this isn't like, this person was giving their testimony as if the person reading the question was their boss and they were going to get them fired by showing them the clip from this podcast. But the story is from a viewer, not the people on the podcast. So there would be no way for this person, if they were the person, to know that that was about them. And I was like, so wait, this person like essentially made like a fake sketch sort of about this. And like people, it's like, okay, technically what he was saying in this unreality had some truth to it. Like, if that had been the case, it would be a genuine sort of like, yeah, that would be a fair refutation of what they said. But it's not real. This is just someone doing it for like the bit. And I've seen people do this before with stuff like, if there's like a viral tweet or something about some kind of drama, someone will just be like, oh, that's about me and my roommate, and then just embellish stuff. And then it gets carried away. And they're like, I was just kidding. I'm sorry. I was just kidding. I thought it was funny. And I realized that like a lot of people just do that now. And so everything you watch, ideally, you should have a thing in your brain that's like, this might not even be real, or like this might have been made. This is just staged. This is a staged thing to get views, because like that's what we do now. And sometimes the thing that is staged is based on a real news story. And you're like, so wait, there's a real news story, and this person is essentially doing a dramatic reenactment, but it's a TikTok, so they're not saying it's a dramatic reenactment of a real news story. It's just like inspired by it. And the people in the comments are all fighting each other like vigorously. I mean, this is especially true with like gender war stuff, where it's stuff about relationships, or it's stuff about men versus women and stuff like that. Like people go to like the fucking war in those comments. all you do is just pose a hypothetical about like, you know, what would you do if your baby mama did this and this happened? And then everyone in the comments is just fighting about whatever their personal thing is that relates to this, you know, like, well, I know that men do this, and like, oh, I think women do this. And you're just like, holy shit. It's like the easiest way to get like engagement. I'm not gonna lie to you all. Once a month, I have a moment where I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be a film critic anymore. Maybe I should just become like a men's rights podcaster. Like, I feel like I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I feel like I would not be able to live with myself, but I think I could be really good at it. And I think I could like actually probably get rich off of it. And I haven't figured out how to successfully do it as a grift and then be able to get out of it. Like, it's like, I feel like that would be a thing where like, there's no way out of that life. Once you start doing that grift and capitalizing on this hideous fissure in the human consciousness or whatever, that like you're just fucked. Even if you end up coming out and be like, this is just a bit, haha, there's no way out. Like, you would have to die in the game. It would be like the end of Carlito's Way. I would try to stop being a men's rights activist podcaster, and then John Leguizamo would fucking shoot me, and I'd probably deserve it. So we got way off topic. I don't know where we are. Like, this stuff has just been on my mind. It's been weighing on me how like even conversations that used to be like this is just like a little like side thing. Like, I've had a rough day at work. I'm just going to talk to some people about sports or comics or whatever. All of those conversations are even poisoned by like this shit. Everything is some kind of culture war thing. Like the fucking dunk contest between Steph Curry and I don't remember the young lady's name. Like, that turned into a whole weird thing. And like, it's just like, is there anything? Like, okay, you know how like those apolitical people are like, God, they're making everything woke. I hate it. I don't want stuff that doesn't have politics in it. I'm turning into the person that's like, I just don't want discourse in it. Like, I just don't, is it possible for us to engage with things as they are and not to shoehorn in your thing and make it like a fight for that? Like, I should be able to watch a trailer for a fucking X-Men cartoon and not have to get into, like, you know what I mean? There's got to be a way. There's got to be a Chrome plugin I've never downloaded or something. There's got to be like a djinn I can ask to make a wish to just get this shit away from me. I don't know. Or I might just have to pick a hobby that like you can't do this too. Like, I feel like I was at peace when I was watching TikToks from that guy that makes shoes. I don't think you can really, his comments never had this type of stuff. He was just making shoes and people were like getting emotional about it. Maybe I gotta get back to that cobbler shit. Okay, I think I've gone far enough off the rails here. So let's talk about what I watched this week. So I watched a handful of things. Like I said, I did go to a screening of Dune Part 2 and I made the video about it. Comical thing that I'm just gonna say here is that that video isn't even done as I'm recording this. Like, that video isn't out yet. I'm like, whenever this podcast is out, it'll be out, but it's not. When I'm done recording this, I have to go back to editing that video. So, Dune, I'm like talking about like, oh, well, in my Dune 2 video, like, who knows? Actually, it doesn't exist yet. I don't know. Who knows? But, hopefully yeah. But I saw the movie. I liked it a lot. I had a really, really good time. I liked it a lot more than the first one. And but it's a movie where like, I really feel like I'm almost the guy from the Starship Troopers debate where like, I did not even a little bit care about any of the deeper stuff that Villeneuve and everyone was trying to accomplish because they made the action and the sci-fi stuff so fucking cool. And I hadn't seen something that was that cool in a while. And that was like all I cared about. Like, it was like a real fist pumping movie for me. And I'm looking forward to seeing it again. And then, you know, preferably being able to talk about the rest of it a little bit more. And I'll definitely do that on the pod next week. Or the week after, maybe I'll do it the week after, whatever. It'll, and then in soon it'll happen when I see the movie again. But I really dug it. If you haven't seen the video or anything like that, like at the very least, I'd say you should see it. I think it's good. Part of me thinks that a big reason why I liked it is the day before I had to watch, Bob Marley One Love, the biopic about Bob Marley. And I hated it. And I have a review coming about it in the Baltimore Beat next week. So I won't beat a dead horse here, but I hated it. It's one of those musical biopics that I hate. It's very Bohemian Rhapsody coded. It's not very good. And the thing that I realized about these movies, that this was an epiphany I had, was that most musical biopics that I don't hate, I just like the music enough to not care. You would think that that would have worked for, Bohemian Rhapsody for me, because I love Queen, but then the movie's really bad. But like Rocket Man isn't great, but you know, I like that movie for the most part. I'm a big Walk the Line fan. I think that movie was really fantastic. But a lot of these movies, it's like, if you can really dig into the music, you can get over how cheesy the shitty the movie is. And this movie made me realize I don't actually like Bob Marley that much. Like, I'm not a big reggae person to begin with. But I realized that like all these moments that are supposed to be like, oh yeah, you know this Bob Marley song? And I was just like, yeah, I don't really care. I mean, it's a very weird thing to discover that like this huge artist, and like I know tons of people that love Bob Marley. And like when I was growing up, my uncle really big into Bob Marley, and it's kind of like my entry point into a lot of reggae was him. And like, I just felt fucking nothing. Every time they would start one of his songs, I was just like, there's this one specific scene in One Love where like he's a big chunk of the movie is them recording the album Exodus, right? And there's a scene where they're working on a song, and his band, like the rest of the Wailers, are like kind of falling into old patterns. And Bob Marley, played by Kingsley Ben-Adir, who was the villain on Secret Invasion, he played Malcolm X in One Night in Miami. He's like, I'm not going to do the voice, but everyone in this movie talks in a bad, comical, like Jamaican accent that makes it sound like a parody. I'm not going to do it, but he was like telling them like, no, like, you know, this is different. Like, this is a whole new sound. Like, you're just doing the same stuff. This sounds like everything we've already done. And then they're like, okay. And they do something different, but it is like not different. It sounds like 4 other Bob Marley songs. But in the moment, they're like, yeah, this is what we really need to tap into. And I was like, are they joking? These 2 songs are not that dissimilar. And I kept having these moments where I'm like, is it just because the movie's so bad? Or do I just like really not give a shit about Bob Marley? It was like I was kind of torn. I was like, maybe I just don't fucking care about his music. That's weird. I thought I did. And maybe I don't. I don't know. That's how you know a movie's bad. But one thing that's funny to me is like a big theme in Dune Part 2 is like Chani and Paul's like relationship, and about him kind of staying true to himself as someone who does not believe in the chosen one prophecies and all that stuff. He just wants to get revenge for his family, and he also wants to help the Fremen. Like, he really genuinely loves and cares about them. And as the story progresses, like he comes to believe that the only way to get all those things done is to do this thing that he knows is going to probably lead to a lot of people dying. And it's sort of like his like dark turn into that. And you see it from Chani's perspective, and she's sort of like constantly trying to get him to see that he's going the wrong way. The day before, I'd seen Bob Marley, and there's a line where Lashana Lynch, who plays Rita Marley, her performance is like fine. She's probably the best person in the movie. She seemed like really thicker than I think I've ever seen her in anything. And the costume design in the movie is not very good. And I kept thinking, like, does she have like padded hips in some of these scenes? Or like, does she like genuinely put on weight for this? That's how bad the movie is. I was literally like measurement watching an actress, which I do not do that necessarily, but like, that kept sticking out to me. I'm like, I don't remember her like being this thick. It's like a weird, like, did they choose to do this for the part? And if so, whatever, who cares? But whatever, Jesus. Anyway, there's a scene where they're arguing, and she's trying to one of the film's alleged themes is the idea that like becoming famous and rich and stuff like in some way corrupted Bob Marley, but the movie never shows ways that he changes or is different. Like, the movie has like one reference to the fact that he's had a bunch of kids out of wedlock, but like it doesn't really engage with any of that. But she has this one line where she's like, you know, when you like wade in pollution, you get polluted. And I was like, when I was watching Dune 2, I was like, this is a weird thing to say, but I was like, oh, this is like what they should have been doing in the Bob Marley movie. Like, they should have been exploring it to this degree, and they just didn't. So much so that entire scene felt like offensive to me, that I was like, are you really trying to bullshit me right now? Like, you care about this arc that doesn't exist in this movie? I fucking hated it. I'm sorry. Like, I'll have a real review that you guys can read. I'll link it in the next episode when it comes out. But awful. Hated it. But I also watched Charlie Wilson's War. Now, I want to be clear. I've seen this movie like 4 times. It's not like it was a rewatch. I was thinking about Philip Seymour Hoffman's performance in the movie as Gust. I don't remember his last name. It's a super Greek name, but whatever. He's in the movie as a CIA agent, and he's great. And Charlie Wilson's War is another TikTok core movie where like there's a couple of scenes in the movie that get shared as TikToks all the time. One is Philip Seymour Hoffman arguing with John Slattery, which is a great scene. And then another is Philip Seymour Hoffman meeting Tom Hanks's character for the first time. He plays Charlie Wilson. And Aaron Sorkin wrote this movie, so it's very like Sorkin, super Sorkin-y. One of the better things he's written, I think. And I rewatched it. I hadn't watched it in a few years, I guess. And the thing about the movie is that it's like Mike Nichols' last movie. And it's written by Aaron Sorkin. It's got a really good cast. It's really well directed. The script is pretty fun. And the movie, like, if you're analyzing it from like a political perspective, the movie feels like the ultimate fucking Aaron Sorkin thing, where it's like what like Aaron Sorkin loves. And if you watch The West Wing or anything he's ever made, he loves like right-leaning people who are like still good. You know, it's like he loves writing like the good Republican, or like, you know, they're not like the evil ones. And the fact that like the hero of this movie is like a Dixiecrat, you know, like womanizing coke user is like, I mean, a little bit on the nose, I guess, for Sorkin, but Hanks is really good in it. But like so much of the like the political stuff is like not as interesting as it could be. And even like the film's original ending got changed because Tom Hanks felt like it was just too much of a downer. You know, like this is like 2007, so I don't want to say it's that close to 9/11, but like the movie originally ends directly implying that like all the good they did because they didn't do the follow-up in the Middle East is the reason 9/11 happened. So someone understandably, Tom Hanks was like, can we not end the movie making the main character that we've spent an hour and a half like cheering loosely responsible for 9/11? And you know, if they had ended the movie that way, it actually makes the whole movie really rad, that it's like this big smiling like, ha ha, look at how we beat the communists, and then like, oh no, but we caused this. And it does feel a little bit like toothless as a result. But I will say, it's very entertaining. Hanks doing the Southern accent stuff is really fun. Amy Adams is like maybe one of my favorite turns from her in this, as like Charlie Wilson's like administrative assistant who like seems like she's a little bit in love with him. Not like romantically, like she just looks up to him and thinks he's really great. But she also has to deal with the fact that like he's not this like great idealistic person, that he's just like a guy and he just likes chasing tail and like getting drunk and stuff. And there are parts of the movie where she seems disappointed in him, and they feel genuinely heartbreaking. Like Amy Adams looks genuinely hurt that this, you know, women often talk about, you know, like the one of the worst things that can happen is like you really feel very strongly about a guy, whether it's romantic or platonic or whatever, and then at some point in knowing them, they will remind you they're just a man. However that may be. Maybe that's going to be on a grand scale. It might be like a micro thing, but there is something they will do that will remind you that's just a guy, you know, straight up. And surprisingly, there's a moment where because Charlie Wilson's about to get like indicted and like this like morality probe or whatever, and Amy Adams has to accept that like he's like refusing to acknowledge to her that he did cocaine with this guy. And she seems really hurt because she's like, you shouldn't have even been there. Like, why are you even around these people? And the way she delivers that line, I don't remember the specific wording of it, is like really, is always stuck with me every time I watch the movie. Like, she seems really fucking hurt by this. And Tom Hanks does a very good job of playing it kind of like, you know, like he feels shame that he's like let her down. And that type of stuff it really works. But it's interesting to see, this is like a 17-year-old movie. It's interesting to see the time from like Amy Adams, essentially every part she got was very close to Junebug. Like she was always sort of playing like a kind of idealistic, young, wide-eyed woman. And it's cool that she's like finally gotten away from that, but she was very good at it, to be honest. So like I sort of understand the typecasting happened. Julia Roberts is like good in the movie, is like this kind of nutty, rich, like Southern socialite lady. But Philip Seymour Hoffman steals the whole thing. It's the best thing in the movie. It's such a great performance. Love everything he does. Miss him dearly every fucking day. Just one of the best. And then the other thing I watched Monsieur Spade. My friend Mario in the last video asked if I'd seen this, and I had never heard of it when he mentioned it. And then I looked it up and I was like, yo! So it's an AMC series. Clive Owen plays Sam Spade from the Maltese Falcon, the Dashiell Hammett character, who's only in the Maltese Falcon and I think a couple of short stories. Most of Dashiell's stuff, the Continental Op is like the main character of most of his books and stories. But Sam, I feel like, is more iconic to people. One, he has an actual fucking name. And two, the Maltese Falcon's like a really good book and like a really good movie. The John Huston version with Humphrey Bogart. So the concept for Monsieur Spade is that it's like a sequel sort of to the Maltese Falcon. And it takes place in the 50s, like the mid 50s and early 60s. And Sam goes to like fucking France, like this small town in France, because Bridget O'Shaughnessy is dead, and he is transporting her daughter to go live with her French father. But the guy's missing, and the guy's mother doesn't want anything to do with her, so like he has to put her in like a convent or something. But he ends up meeting a French rich woman and marrying her, and then she passes away. So the most of the story takes place in the early 60s, like right after or slightly during the French-Algerian War, and Sam Spade has like this idyllic new life. He lives in a big house that the rich wife left him. He swims naked in her pool every day. It's like how he sort of like communes with her spirit. And he ends up getting embroiled in a typical Dashiell Hammett mystery. Only it's not quite typical because it has like, it's structured somewhat similarly to Hammett's work. So I'm going to hit myself. The show was created by Scott Frank, who wrote Minority Report, The Lookout. He also helped create Queen's Gambit, I think. And then Tom Fontana, who used to write for like St. Elsewhere, created Oz, worked on Homicide: Life on the Street. So these two guys, who I guess are neighbors, decided to collaborate on a show, and they both love, you know, the same type of crime fiction stuff. And the show becomes this. It's like 6 episodes. It jumps between the mid 50s to the early 60s. Clive Owen is Sam Spade. Most of their cast is not like named people. There's a couple of names who pop up later, but like it's mostly just Clive Owen. And it feels like this strange, off-kilter Dashiell Hammett type thing, but like in Paris. And there's like all this like political intrigue, and it's kind of like a spy story and all this different stuff. And it's like, Scott Frank said he really wanted to explore, like, he's getting older. He wanted to explore a character like Sam getting older, and also to like explore some stuff about like masculinity and all this different stuff. And I watched the first 5 episodes, or I watched the first 4 episodes Saturday, and then the 5th episode Sunday, and then the finale. I got like a free trial to Acorn TV on Amazon Prime to watch the show. Because I don't want to pay for Amazon Plus, and I've already had a free trial of that before for some other show I watched one time. And also Acorn TV just sounded like Corncob TV from the Coffin Flop sketch on I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson, so that was humorous to me. But I guess Acorn airs the show on a different schedule than AMC does, so like I couldn't get the finale for a couple of days, so I didn't watch it until this morning, actually. And I will admit that I like the show. I'd strong recommend to anybody who likes mysteries and stuff. I was really into it for the first like 2 episodes, and then episodes 3 and 4, I liked it, but I wasn't crazy about it. And then episodes 5 and 6, I was just kind of like, all right, let's wrap this up. Not like it got worse or something. It was just that like it started turning into something that was less of what I really liked about it. It's hard to articulate. I don't think the show changed necessarily, but I'll give you an example. Like around episode 3 or 4, Sam starts cursing more, and the more I heard Clive Owen and Sam Spade say fuck and fucking, it felt like it was like listening to someone play the piano and they start hitting the wrong note, and you're like, that's not right. And then like there's a kind of a weird subplot involving the girl and like her being underage and this guy like being into her and stuff. And they sort of mitigate it with like a twist later, but at the same time, I thought it was still a weird thing to go with. And also like the plot gets kind of convoluted in a way that doesn't feel like Dashiell Hammett. It actually feels like Chandler. Like I feel like Raymond Chandler wrote a lot of books that like don't make any fucking sense. Like The Big Sleep famously is like not try to piece that together. It just does not work. And I always thought that Hammett's work wasn't like that. So it was a little bit weird that it ended up feeling more like Chandler in the end to me, but you know, I'm not so sure. But it was fun. I thought Scott Frank directed every episode, and then he and Tom Fontana wrote every episode together. And it's interesting because it's like, it's sort of a film noir story, but it doesn't look like a film noir. Like there's a lot of, it's almost all during the day. It's like this kind of like beautiful, like these beautiful scenery and stuff. And it feels like you're like, I feel like Frank said he was drawing from a lot of like European cinema influences. And like, it feels more like this kind of like hazy, laid back, like European movie than like the kind of more terse kind of like, you know, the chiaroscuro of like the black and white stuff of film noir. So like, that was kind of cool. Clive Owen's having a ball. I think he's really good in it. There's a bunch of very good dialogue exchanges that are like super Hammett-y, you know? So if you like any of Hammett's work, or you like Miller's Crossing, like the Coen Brothers movie is very Dashiell Hammett. All of it really hit you could tell it was created by two Dashiell Hammett super fans. I'll say that. Like you can tell this is created by a guy for whom Red Harvest changed his life, you know? So I like that part of it. But by the end of it, I was just kind of like, oh, let's wrap this up. Let's see what's going on. The actual last scene of the finale kind of brought it all back to me. That whole bit is really, really well done, even though I thought it was going to be kind of goofy. So it's a good show. I definitely check it out. I'm glad Clive Owen got this look. He definitely deserves parts like this. You know what the show kind of reminded me of? And I don't know how to make this a comparison. I don't know if you guys have ever seen John from Cincinnati. It was like this HBO show that David Milch did. And it was like about like a surfer who was like Jesus or something. I only watched a couple of episodes, but I remember the show having this very strange vibe that I couldn't quite place down. Like I didn't understand that it wasn't like at the time it was very foreign to me. But the thing that I dug about it was that it felt very clearly like all the writers who were working on it were doing exactly what they wanted to do for them. Like the vibe was very specific to their energy, and it didn't really connect with audiences, and it didn't even really become like a cult classic, honestly. But when you watch it, you're like, this feels very pure. This feels like it's like right from the tap. This is exactly what this guy wants to be doing. And Monsieur Spade, for better or worse at times, is like that. It feels like Scott Frank and Tom Fontana got to do exactly what they wanted, and it was just kind of for them. It's like this sweet little thing they did together for each other and themselves. And if you like it, cool. And if you don't, that's also cool. And I really like that vibe. I would like to see more 6-episode miniseries that are like this than stuff where everyone involved is like, we are trying to make the greatest television show ever made, you know, every time. And you're like, you don't have to do that. It's fine. So yeah, that's what I watched this week. We got time for a couple of questions. All right. So, question 1. John asks, is there a Dakota Johnson performance that you think is actually good? There have been good ones she's been in, and some she hasn't been actively terrible, but are there any times she's actually made something better? This is kind of hard because, like, I've only seen her in a handful of things. I personally think she's actually okay in the 50 Shades movies, even though those aren't very good. But that seems like faint praise. I wasn't really big about the remix of Suspiria she was in, to the point that I don't actually remember what her performance was like. The 2 best times I think she was good in something was like her one scene in The Social Network when Justin Timberlake wakes up with her. And then she has a pretty small part in 21 Jump Street, I think, if I'm not mistaken. If I had to say the best thing she's ever done for me, there's a movie called The High Note with her and Tracee Ellis Ross. Movie's fine, pretty mediocre, but she's like pretty solid in it. I would say it's like one of her better performances. But I feel like if I watched it again, I'd be like, this is also mid. I don't know, but she's funny. I don't know, like we like her. I feel like she'll end up finding a groove at some point, and also she's like one of the most nepo babies ever. So I feel like she'll keep getting chances. And also, even if the movies are bad, she's going to be funny on the press run every time, apparently. So thank you. Good question. DT asks, what was the earliest avenue for your exposure to fancy films, art house, for, and etc.? Was it a college or higher ed thing, or was it a public broadcasting TV station, a special shelf at the video store? How did off Hollywood film culture enter your life? This is pretty easy to answer, actually, and I hope having the podcast now and having this many episodes of the podcast, I'm always like, have I talked about this before? Am I repeating myself? Am I like beating Dom lore into the ground for people? But I hope I don't have a lot of overlap here. When I was like 14, 15, I liked movies. I'd watched a lot of movies, a lot of basic Hollywood movies, a lot of 90s, a lot of 80s, like classics and stuff like that, but a lot of 90s, you know, throwaway VHS movies, basically. When I was like 14 or 15, I had rewatched some like Martin Scorsese movies and stuff with a slightly more mature perspective, and I really got into film through that. And I started to go to libraries, and I would get a lot of old movies, like old movies and foreign movies from that. But I think when I really fully started to turn was, well, we had IFC, like the Independent Film Channel, and I used to watch a lot of indie movies on that and the Sundance Channel. So like getting into indie movies and then having to read not having to, but choosing to read interviews with independent filmmakers and seeing that a lot of those guys were influenced by foreign films and other stuff like that. So like I got into reading Filmmaker Magazine and Premiere, and like around when I was a teenager, like in my late teens, like I would read like a lot of music magazines, like Under the Radar and stuff, and that's how I discovered new bands and new artists. But with movies, it was like I read those things, and then I would read about specific films that were being made. Like I used to love in Movie Maker, they would have an article about a movie, and they would show you, like, they would tell you what camera they were using and like what type of film stock the filmmaker wanted to use and why, and they'd name check some movies that you never heard of, and then you go check those out. So like I think that's how I got in like Wong Kar-wai. Honestly, I think that like I'd seen like multiple cinematographers in that magazine be like, you know, like Wong Kar-wai, and I'd be like, I don't know what the fuck that is. I gotta go find out. I think what was very lucky for me though is like when I was like 16, 17, the movie theater that I went to all the time was a mainstream theater, but they booked independent movies, or they booked independent leaning stuff. So like I saw like Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation there. I saw some Woody Allen movies there. It was like a Regal that played, you know, Spider-Man or whatever, but they also would play some reps, some like not rep stuff, some arty stuff on their small auditorium. So what was cool is I would look up a movie in one of these magazines, and then when I would call the theater, they would have it. And like I didn't understand at the time how rare that was, that most other neighboring multiplexes didn't do that. So that was like my entry point. And then years later, not years later, but like a few years later, when I started getting into movies that were more out there, most of those I would watch at video stores, because like, you know, those things would come to DVD, you know, so you get those that way, pre-streaming. But like I would see a lot of independent and documentary and foreign films at the video store that I worked at. And then I ended up fully kind of branching out into I was still in Virginia at the time, but going into Washington, DC. There was an art house theater there. I went to see Michel Gondry's Science of Sleep there. It was like my first time going to see an independent movie at independent movie theater. And then, I don't know, like a year later I ended up working there, and then I worked there for like 7 years. But yeah, like I got into that stuff relatively early, I guess. And like a lot of it was just trying to be open-minded. Like I generally speaking, if I like something, I get into it, I end up getting very into it and checking a lot of stuff out. And as I get older, obviously I get a little bit less voracious, but when I was young, you know, all I had was time. I wasn't like going out and doing a lot of stuff. So I watched a lot of movies, and, I'm very lucky, actually. I feel like that I was able to have that stuff exposed to me, and then I like stuck with it. Because there were times where I would venture beyond what I liked or knew, and I would be like, I don't get it, I don't know what's going on here, but I would keep trying. You know what I mean? And a huge thing that helped me is when I first started getting books about filmmaking and writing. I started out with a lot of books on screenwriting specifically, and there's actually not that many of those, like not that many good ones, I'll be honest. When I got into, I'd read Scorsese on Scorsese from the library like several times, And then I was at a Books a Million, which is where I used to go to like buy graphic novels and stuff. And they had a book called Godard on Godard. And I'd never seen any French New Wave anything. And I thought, oh, this will be like Scorsese on Scorsese. It'll just be stuff at this guy's movies. This will be great. But it's actually just a bunch of like essays and things Godard had written before he started making movies, and then some after. And I had no language for most of the movies in that book. So like I hadn't seen any French New Wave movies. I hadn't seen I'd seen a lot of older movies, but not the ones that those guys were inspired by, because they were really inspired by a lot of like, for me at the time anyway, like off the beaten path stuff from like Howard Hawks and whatnot. So I remember reading it, and I read it multiple times, not even because I was so into it, but just because it wasn't sticking with me. Because I would read a whole thing and be like, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. I've never seen this. I don't know. And even when I would go watch the movies and then I would reread that passage, I was still just like, I felt so dumb. And I was young enough to think that, okay, maybe I'll just never understand these kinds of movies. Maybe this is just not for me. That's okay. You know, at the time I really liked Kevin Smith, you know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with just sticking to whatever. But, the more and more I dug, the more and more I read, the more it did start to click for me. I wish I could remember which movies helped it click for me, but like I saw Breathless and I was like, whatever. I saw Band Apart and I was like, whatever. You know what I mean? Like it was not so much the movies themselves. It was figuring out the way he was writing about the movies, I think it was for me. Because at the time, the only film criticism I could really read was like stuff in magazines. Some of it was good. But then online, everything I read was like Ain't It Cool News, Chud, Joe Blow, you know what I mean? Like very like often incurious stuff, you know what I mean? Some of it, I don't want to cast aspersions on all of it, but some of it was like really shitty. And understanding like, wait a minute, Godard isn't like some fancy, you know, like artsy director. He was like a fucking nerd. All the Kahidu Cinema guys were just like nerds who liked movies and just started making them. So when I was able to look at it from the perspective of like, this is like all the IFC guys I like, but in France a long time ago, then it started to like unlock for me where I was like, oh, okay. So like him talking about this movie is like Linklater talking about Altman or something. You know, it helped me kind of figure out the stuff I wasn't getting. And then I just kept trying different stuff. I part of it was I was just forcing myself to try different things. I just felt like I needed to develop my palette, and I needed to like, you know, understand the stuff better. And I think it made my life better, honestly. Like I'm happier for having gotten into that stuff at the age that I did. And you know, I've copped on the pod to being less curious than I used to be and wanting to fix that. So that is something I'm always kind of working towards. But thank you, DT. That was a really good question. Final question is from the homie Dylan Roth. Hi, Dylan. Acknowledging that you're critical of fans who think they can book WWE better than the professionals, pitch us your ideal main event storylines for next year's WrestleMania. What's the match and how do we get there? Yeah, so like Dylan is doing some really cool stuff on his Patreon where he is doing some what I will call very spirited fantasy booking. If you guys don't know Dylan, Dylan has a podcast where they I'm trying to think of like the best way to pitch it. I feel like anytime I have to pitch a friend's thing, I'm always like, I'm not pitching this badly. But they have this podcast essentially about the Dark Universe. I don't know if you guys remember the Dark Universe failure thing that happened where like Universal tried to relaunch everything, you know, with like the shitty fucking Mummy movie and stuff like that. Whatever, that was the thing that happened. Dylan and his co-host Dalton have a podcast called Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe? And they essentially, every episode is them trying to pitch this right. I'm not trying to fuck up my friends' thing. Every episode is they essentially come up with concepts for modern versions of Universal Monster stories, but then they actually create like an ongoing sort of MCU type thing involving all of them. And like every season they all culminate in like a big crossover movie and stuff. I got to do an episode with them. It was really fun. They're both so good at this, actually, like that I was really intimidated by being like, oh man, like I'm actually not, it's been a very long time since I've done any kind of like real creative writing. And I was just like astonished that like these cats have been recreationally just like writing universal movie slates better than the studio's been doing it, essentially. But anyway, long way off. But I'm saying that is that Dylan also is doing similar stuff on his Patreon with actual like WWE fantasy booking, and like it's the way he's going about it is really, really cool. I'm really into it. And you guys should check it out. I'll link it in the show notes. But he's right. I hate, I'm like so anti-fans. Like anytime I listen to, Dylan actually has very cool ideas. He's very smart about storytelling. But in general, when most people talk to me about wrestling storytelling and they pitch things at me, I'm always like, that's fucking awful. Shut up. And that's not me thinking like, oh, I come up with better ideas than that. It's more like I literally don't even like coming up with ideas like that. When I see something bad, it's easy to kind of be like, I would do this differently, or they should do this. But coming from like wholesale, starting from scratch, I'm not quite as great at. I feel like maybe I used to be, and now I just don't tap into that part of my brain or my curiosity. But I will say, what I do think they should do, like I'm not going to be able to genuinely like strongly fantasy book something here, but I can say like the broad strokes of what I think I want. Assuming this year that Cody Rhodes beats Roman Reigns, finishes the story, and becomes the undisputed WWE champion, Cody will essentially be like, genuinely speaking, like the hero on WWE television. And I keep seeing people talk about fun ways he could turn heel. They just don't need to do that. It's just like not worth it. Like there's so much money in him being a babyface. He's doing so well at it. Like I have no interest in seeing him turn heel again. So by next year's Mania, I imagine Cody will still, he's probably not gonna have like a year-long title reign, but he will still be one of the top guys. So there's 2 nights at WrestleMania. I do imagine that one of the nights will involve Cody doing something. Now, to me, it seems like it would be really easy to do Cody and Punk, because we saw right before Punk got out of the Royal Rumble that those two had a fucking electric segment together. Where like on the mic, everything, it felt so alive. And I would absolutely love to see that be one of the main events the next year. I think the other one I hope is actually one of the women's matches. Like I hope they finally pull the trigger on Bianca Belair versus Rhea Ripley. I think that's a big money match whenever they choose to do it. And I think that when they do it, I would like it to happen in WrestleMania. And I think it should be one of the real main events, not like a main event, you know? But, and I don't even care how they get there. I just think those two are so very clearly the hottest 2 women in the company. And they're like the next generation. And they really feel like the way like Cena and Batista felt when they first came up. And families will be fed off of that match when it finally happens. But my thing with the Punk Cody stuff is like Punk getting hurt and like being injured. He's not going to be back until like SummerSlam-ish at the earliest. I think Survivor Series at the latest. And he's probably going to come back and like immediately feud with Drew, since Drew like took credit for injuring him and stuff. So Punk is going to be a babyface for that. You know what I mean? He's probably going to win the Royal Rumble next year. I feel like that's the right call for him, you know? And my thing is Cody has to stay a babyface, and Punk, people are going to want to see Punk win the Rumble. They're going to want to see him main event WrestleMania. That's the big thing he's never done. They want to see that happen. And you know, we want it so badly, but it's like, I don't know how much I'm going to want to see a face versus face feud be the main event of WrestleMania. So, but it's Punk. And I think that they would have to do it in a way where Punk is, I hate when people book things where someone's a tweener. It's like being a face and being a heel is lame. He's got to be in the middle. I don't believe that. But I think that you would have to do kind of what they did in that segment on Raw last month, which is that they're both good guys. They don't fundamentally hate each other. There's some animosity. There's like this energy between them. And I think I feel like it would have to be somewhat similar to like Austin Rock at WrestleMania 17, where they had this like ongoing rivalry, and it didn't really feel like The Rock was the heel and Stone Cold was the face. Like they just kind of felt like equal stars. And then ultimately at the ending, obviously Stone Cold turned heel. I sort of think that the right thing to do with it would be to have Punk maybe turn heel in the main event. Like, I don't know how exactly, but I feel like just I trust that between Cody and Punk, they would be able to find a lot of layers and stuff. Like the way they weave their shit together in that Raw segment of, you know, Cody, being told, I'm actually more the American dream than your dad. And then Cody being like, I'm more CM Punk than you. And like all that stuff was like so good. I'd love to see that explored. But I would like to see what Punk hasn't been a heel in over 10 years, right? I would love to see what he would do with a modern heel character in this era where things are a little different creatively. He's done multiple kinds of heel characters, and I would love to see what I'd been wanting to see him do heel work in AEW for a long time. And then I guess for some of those people, he was just doing it backstage. And I think that when he comes back from injury, you're going to have months and months of people being very excited to see him win the Rumble, excited to see him go to Mania. So I don't think you can have him turn on the road. I think you would have to keep it being kind of like a respectful rivalry that keeps heating up and keeps, threatening to bubble over into someone getting nasty with it. And then I think you would just save that for the match itself. And then I think that in the finish, however it goes, I feel like you either, because look, Punk getting the main event at all, that's like his win. It doesn't matter if he wins the match or wins the title. It's not really that important. But doing something where he turns heel out of that, because he's only got like another couple of years of active work anyway. You know what I mean? I think that would be really fun. And I think that the two of them are on such big scale of stars that they could really make magic together. And that's like the thing I want to see the most. I didn't think I would want to see that either. That's not like on a work rate level. That's not a match I'm dying to see, but on a like energy and personality level, I think they could really do a lot of fun stuff. I mean, I would also love to see Sammy win one of the world titles in the main event next year somehow as an underdog and stuff like that. I almost feel like that should just happen, not at a WrestleMania. It can just happen at any other time of the year and give him a little title run. Because I don't know that I need to see another underdog babyface fighting to get to the, you know what I mean? I feel like it'll just be too repetitive to other type of stuff. And I love Sammy. I don't want to see him get what feels like a gimme type thing. So yeah, I would want Cody and Punk in the main event of WrestleMania night 2. If we're getting Bianca Rhea, they can go night 1 and the women can really close the weekend out. But that's what I want to see. And I just want to see how they would do it. I'm really curious about seeing what Punk would do now, like where he would go creatively now, because he's such a like tinkerer psychologically and stuff. I think it'd be really fun. And I think that Cody should just stay being the modern day Cena guy that he's become. He's very good at it. I feel like he's in some ways better at it than Cena. That's what I want to see. So thanks, Dylan. And again, please check out Dylan's stuff. I love him. He is great. So yeah, that's the episode. We made it through another one. Thank you for listening. As always, love having you guys here. If you liked this on YouTube, hit the like. If you loved it, please subscribe. Hit the little bell icon. You'll get notifications whenever I put out new videos. And if you have anything to share, you can put the comments below. If you have questions for future episodes, you can put those in the comments as well. Or if you're listening to this and you're not on the YouTube, you can hit me on Twitter, you can hit me on Instagram. You can email me at armchairauteur@gmail.com. And I love answering your guys' questions. I feel like I want to get more questions than like I feel like with the first few episodes I got a lot of questions, and now I get like a few. Ask me more stuff. I feel like this sounds kind of demanding. I apologize. I just think it would be fun to have more of like the interaction stuff on the episodes and less of me going on weird tangents because I'm unstable. So any questions you guys have, no matter how silly you think they are, I would love to answer them. I love talking to you all. So thank you again for listening. Yeah, we'll talk soon.